Now, in your top story tonight, MP of Ilanki Tamil Arasu Katchi, M.A. Sumanthiran, says that the gap in state revenue can be easily bridged through the tobacco tax. However, the minister went on to say that vested interests prevent legislative amendments which could address the situation. Speaking at a current affairs program at Hyde Park within Devari Amuwatta, MP Sumanthiran commented on the country's commitment towards human rights obligations and claimed that authorities have made various commitments at international fora only to later observe them in the breach. The minister also commended the government on the recent measures taken by the government to uplift the living standards of the estate community.
Concern about taxation here again is that the rich and those who evade taxes are given an opportunity to continue to evade taxes. Do you have a counter proposal to arrest this situation?
Yes, there are several proposals that we have made. In fact, I have made it public as well. For instance, tobacco taxation policy is something that I raised when I was chair of the Public Finance Committee of Parliament during last Parliament. Very easily we can bridge the gap. We have shown with data that is policy. But there are vested interests that don't allow those measures to be implemented. In fact, at the discussion on Monday with the President, I told them an anecdote when I was chair of the Public Finance Committee, and I, by the way, asked some of the Treasury officials, tell us your taxation policy on tobacco at the next meeting. Before I went home, there were packets of information delivered to my house from Ceylon Tobacco Company. Senior President's Council calling me and saying, we want to come and meet you and explain this to you. Somebody tried to retain me to appear for a small trader in Jaffna who had sold a cigarette without it being in a packet. That's a kind of vested interest that you have, very powerful, very wealthy. So I can imagine what kind of pressure they bring about on personnel in the government to let them evade taxes.
At a time when Sri Lanka faces critical questions at international fora in terms of human rights, commitments or accountability, what is your view pertaining to the country's accountability and compliance with human rights commitments made to the international community?
Country has time and again made various commitments only to observe them in the breach. So that's a serious concern that we continue to raise at those fora. We are part of a civilized community of nations, and as responsible member of the United Nations, we must ourselves comply with the commitments we make as a country and not to breach them. Unfortunately, with regard to accountability and various human rights obligations, we have only observed them in the breach.
The land issue, the government assures that it is in the process of solving. You have raised certain concerns.
Yeah, we have raised that concern because people's private lands are still being occupied by the military long after the violent conflict ended. There is no necessity for the military to continue to occupy that. It is true that the government has returned a lot of the private land, and that must be acknowledged, and I have done that at every opportunity. More than 80% of the private land have been returned, and that happened during the last government. But still, large swaths of land are still being occupied by the military and not enabling people to get back to their livelihood activities, particularly farming, etc. There is one strip of land next to Palale Airport where the military is cultivating the land, taking the produce out of that land and selling it to the owners who are in welfare centers. That's not acceptable.
Government has taken measures in terms of the estate community, and these measures are seen as progressive.
Very progressive.
Some may question whether these are targeting elections.
Well, I don't want to make a judgment call on that. Every measure that any government takes, if it is progressive, they get votes for it as well. That's why you have. But to give them land ownership, to give them housing, is a very, very progressive step indeed. Something that ought to have been done long time ago. And I must commend the government for taking initiative on that.